Oh, I hope everybody's doing well today. I'm Abbie Roads, and you are watching the Isn't It Romantic Book Club, where we're going to be discussing Katherine Schweit's book, The Women Who Talk to the Dead. And this is a different book for us.
Yeah.
This is the first time I think we've had like a nonfiction book here. So this has been really fun and different
We're excited.
yes, totally cool. It was really a different, fun read. Not fun. Fun would not be the word. Interesting read. That would be the word. Yes, fascinating.
Compelling.
Yes. Yes. So anyway, for all of you who are here, if you want to just leave a comment, ask a question, feel free to do that wherever you're at, whether you're on YouTube or Facebook, wherever you're at, make sure you're doing that. And we always love to hear where you're from too. So you can always tell us that. And so I'm just going to get started. If you don't know me, I'm Abbie Roads. I write dark romantic thrillers. I tell people to think about my books like an episode of Criminal Minds meets a love story with a little bit of a twist. And I literally have no books to show you because I gave them all away during Secret Santa days and have not reordered. So I'm sorry I can't show you any. So anyway, that's me.
Hi, everyone. I'm Diana Muñoz Stewart. I write romantic suspense for the strong of heart. My latest series, Broken Promises and Fatal Promises, is out now. And the third book in the series, Hard Promises, will be out in June.
Hi, everyone.
Can't wait.
I know, I can't wait either. I can't wait to see the new cover for that one too, Diana.
Oh, it's coming up in a couple weeks.
Oh, good. My name is Sharon Wray. I write romantic suspense and contemporary romance, and think sexy Green Berets meets Dan Brown with interesting plots and sorts of historical references. And I also write contemporary romance. And for the next few weeks, I'm in an anthology called Snowed In With You. It'll be gone, I think, like the first week of March. So
wow, that is a big book.
It is a big book. It's huge. And my story in here is called The Christmas Cabin Proposal. So anyway.
Fun.
I'm also the one checking the YouTube pages. So in the Facebook pages. So if I'm looking down at my phone, that's what I'm doing. I'm not
monitoring questions and comments. Yeah. Hi, everybody. Jennie Marts. I write small town stories with humor and heart and occasionally a dead body. So I write cozy mysteries about book clubs and bees. I write hockey rom-coms. And I also write some steaming hot cowboys. So with my latest book, Lost and Found Cowboy, which is the 5th in the Laster Ranch series. And wow, was this book fascinating. Oh my gosh, I can't wait to introduce you guys to Katherine, aka Kate. Katherine Schweit, I hope I'm saying that right, I'm going to give you her bio, but I think her bio probably could fill a book by itself.
Yeah.
She worked as an FBI special agent executive, a prosecutor, and a journalist before settling down as a full-time writer, professor, and security consultant. Who thinks that is settling down? Holy mackerel, woman. She lives in a home in Virginia that is of Washington, D.C. Welcome, Kate.
Hi, I'm so excited to be here.
Hi, we're so excited to have you. Boy, did we enjoy that book.
I know.
It is a crazy book. It's a crazy story.
Well, thank you for our
for our readers, tell our readers a little bit about what the book is about.
So I do write nonfiction books, and I spent 20 years as an FBI agent. So about maybe 7 years ago, a friend of mine who was an agent who runs the forensics team in Detroit was telling me a problem she was having about getting funding for something. She's telling me this story. It's this situation that she had, and she's telling me something that's astonishing to me. And I said, you have to let me write about that. So I spent 6 years writing about it because this is what it's about. It's in Detroit for the last 70 years, the Detroit missing persons cases have been run by various different people in the police department. And along came Detective Shannon Jones, who decided that her missing persons cases sometimes were solved by her going back to the warehouse to look for murder victims who were buried but never identified. So she convinces, now it gets to the point where it just sounds like a movie plot.
Yeah. Yeah.
She convinces my friend, Leslie Larsen, who's an FBI special agent, to dig up these unidentified murder victims that there are just files for in the warehouse. And she says to Leslie, if we dig them up and we get their DNA from the cemetery plots, we will have that much further to go on, and we could solve these murders, and we could reconnect them with their families. And that is a great idea until Shannon tells Leslie, okay, there are 200 bodies we want you to dig up.
Yeah.
100 separate murder victims. And the book is about if they can do it and how they could do it. And some of the victims.
Oh, it was an incredible book. I mean,
yeah.
And the time frame in which it was happening too, before things were crazy with social media. That's what I thought was interesting. What has it happened before? Right. I can't imagine it happening now. Like there'd be so much more drama ongoing about it at the same time. It was nice that they were able to work, I don't want to say in peace, but kind of out of the eye. They could get the work done.
They really did. That's true, because there was very little news coverage ever on it. They spent 5 years in a coordinated way to dig up these victims. And how they had to do it and what it involved was just, I was gobsmacked about the details of it.
At what point did you come into the process? All the way from the very beginning?
From there, I knew about it in the beginning, but I started going into Detroit, which is where this occurs. I live in Northern Virginia, so Detroit is about 9 hours drive from here. I started to go into Detroit probably in the third year, in their third year of digging.
And were you at the dig sites?
Oh yeah, because I wanted to write about them. So I had to get permission from the FBI and from the Detroit Police Department to go there and to, talk to the investigators while they were doing things and watch it and describe it. So that was the purpose of, me being involved in it for so long, because so many people, when they talk about true crime or they talk about murder victims, they want to tell a story about a bad guy who did something, and then there's a victim, and then the victim gets their justification, gets their due just when the bad guy goes to jail. But that's really just a story about the bad guy. I wanted to tell a story about the good guys.
And you did an amazing job.
Yeah. And how did you, I feel like the book is very, which I like, female centric. Like it's all, almost everybody's female, and in positions of power and the body farm and, just so many, I just felt like this was just very female focused. And I don't think I've read a true crime like that before that was female focused. Maybe they're out there. I just haven't read one. So I thought that was really cool. And then how did you come up with the title Women Who Talk to the Dead? Like, did you know that was going to be the title at the beginning, or did you that evolve to that?
That came to me. I don't write, nonfiction doesn't have the most exotic titles. The last book I published before this one is called A Simple Guide to the Second Amendment. It's pretty clear what that is, right? Pretty clear what that is. So in this case, I think what to me was so fascinating is the women. I, of course, knew Leslie from before she joined the FBI. I knew her because she lived in Wisconsin and I had worked in the Wisconsin FBI office. So when she joined the FBI, I saw her the first day she was there, and now she's running the Detroit forensics team, the third largest in the country. But I hadn't met Shannon, and she introduced me to Shannon. And then I said, well, who else do I need to talk to understand this? And they said, oh, you need to talk to so-and-so. And so I'd talk to that person. Oh, you need to talk to so-and-so because these are the forensic anthropologists we're working with. There's 3 of them here. There's 5 of them here. How about at the Michigan State Police? Talk to so-and-so. How about at the missing women and children's organization? Talk to this person. Every person they named was a female.
Wow.
Every one, like every single one, the female prosecutor, every single person, the person who wrote the search warrants for which you need to do to dig up a body in the cemeteries. And I said, why? Eventually I was just I was asking them, why are there? So I actually addressed that with one of the forensic anthropologists in the book.
It was really interesting. One of the other things I loved about the book, and I don't want to give too much away in the end because I really want people to read it, was how their work brought, and again, it was the emerging of new technology too, started bringing all of these other lists together. You know, these missing person lists and how important they were, and getting the data, the information or the intel early on and getting it logged somewhere. I thought that was really interesting.
I think these are pieces that, you know, I have a friend at the New York Times who I had read the book, and we were doing a chit chat at a bookstore once, and he said, I said to him, I said to the audience, I said, I think that sometimes reporters will write, or you'll hear on the news, or in some true crime drama, you'll hear, so they exhumed the body and got the DNA, which connected them to so-and-so. And I said, that's usually like the clause of a part of a sentence. And he said, I think I've written that sentence before. And I said, that's the problem, right? Like, what does it take to do that? What does it take to get, you know, a body out of the ground, find the DNA in it? Then what do you do with that DNA? How do you decide where to dig? How do you decide where that body might be? Everything underground is not as it seems. And I think I try to detail that too, to express how the frustrations went, you know, as we went along. So it does connect together what may seem to be disparate. People listening may know, for instance, John Walsh. John Walsh and his wife had Rev had a child who was abducted and killed. And John Walsh started you know, a big organization to find missing children, and that still exists today. Those are all databases, what you were talking about. They're all different, these different disparate places. And, you know, when you spend, which I have done, when you spend days with, you know, at events that are missing in Michigan events, for instance, and they have them in every other state, where all the people there have family members missing, and all of their efforts, their whole life kind of stops. You talk to a table full of people and they say, we're looking for my brother. He disappeared 8 years ago, 12 years ago. You really catch the gravity of how important it is for all those different resources to come together. And it's not a pretty puzzle where you put them all together and it all works. So I think that's what they struggle with even today. And I didn't answer your question about the title of the book. So I'm sorry about that, but I wanted you to know that, first of all, when I go to sell this book, like at book fairs, sometimes people come up to me and say, is this a book about mystics? And then I think, oh, what a fail on the title. So that's my title fail. Women Who Talk to the Dead. I said, no, it is not at all. But I think I tried to convey in the book, and the conversations that I had with Leslie and Shannon about what it's like for them personally, a Detroit detective, FBI agent, who constantly whose career involves digging up bodies and accepting bones that people bring to them, and their desire to be respectful to the families, but not just to the families who lost that person, but respectful to the bone they're holding. And I think that they feel that person. And I try to convey that through their language, because I kind of, you know, I quote them directly any place I can.
I definitely felt that.
I totally felt that.
Oh yeah. There was
just thinking about her taping all tacking up all the pictures on the, like, every day going into the office and seeing that. And I mean, it was just fascinating. And for somebody that's like not in your part of the country, I live in Colorado. I mean, you dig here. I don't know what you're talking about, finding water in the ground. Like, talking like, we dig here, the ground is hard as a rock.
Yeah, they were a little surprised.
Yeah, but just the, you know, you do hear that on CSI all the time. Oh, we'll exhume the body. And thinking about the different facets of having to pump out water, which that's so foreign to me to even understand that. And to have the bodies layered so deep, and that was just fascinating too. And just all the little pieces that you don't think about, but that are really part of life.
Yes.
You know, I mean,
Yeah.
our
What
life
it takes and how
really
desperate
is like
people
life
are.
and death. And we
Right.
talk about life all the time, but just in understanding some of the stuff that happens in death too was fascinating.
The persistence was fascinating, and these women were all fascinating. I imagine that you're writing about people that you know. There must be a little bit of awkwardness knowing that, you know, they're going to read about themselves in this book.
Huge. Oh my gosh, that was my biggest worry, as you can imagine. Because it is a nonfiction book, and who would think that, but it's written as a narrative. It's called narrative nonfiction. So it's written kind of like a movie script. As a matter of fact, there's a documentary, and there's a company that does documentaries that my partner in LA is talking to. So
it'd be fantastic.
Yeah.
To see
So
that.
maybe
that. Yeah.
because it's written. I mean, it's written in a narrative, so you live with them through their successes and through their failures and their frustrations. Not so much with the victims. There's a lot of news that you get, a lot of stories that you hear where you hear about the victims, or we put in our minds what might have the victim have been thinking. I wanted to, stick with what we had, but that did mean that I did, I can't tell you how many interviews with Leslie and Shannon and Jody, who now lives in Canada, a forensic anthropologist, and this person and that person. And I recorded all of them, transcribed all of them. It was very, Bob Woodward, and Bernstein, right? I mean, it was like, because, you recorded, because I began to realize very quickly that if I didn't record the conversations, I wouldn't really have their words. I'd have my paraphrasing of it. And I wanted their words. I wanted this to be their story. Even so much so that, like, there's one spot where, like, I made a mention about a call into headquarters. Well, that initial call was made to me, but I didn't put that in there because I didn't want to be part of the story. I wanted their story. It's so powerful. I wanted it to stand on its own, and I wanted the readers to enjoy the travel with it, so to speak. And when you talk about the individuals, let me just tell you one thing. Jody Barta, who's a forensic anthropologist, lives in London, Ontario. And I saw her, I was up there for work a few months ago. And I hadn't seen her in person since the book came out. And I sent her a box of books. And then she texted me and she said, "My mom said you captured me to a T."
Oh, wow.
That's a compliment.
That is
Very much.
great.
Yeah, very much.
And they're happy with the book? Are they all happy with the book?
They are, astonishingly. Yeah. You're right, though. It was very intimidating. I was really afraid to have them read it ahead of time. I didn't want any of them to carry the burden of interpreting or determining whether it was the material in the book was right. And when you weave the characters together, as you do with your characters, you have to rely on the fact that you're, weaving their truth carefully, and the short of giving them the entire book before I let anybody else read it, I couldn't really figure out a way to do that. So I didn't, and I gave them the book once I had it done.
I just got to say, I feel like fiction writer, like all of us here, except for you, Catherine, we all write romance novels. And man, I feel like that is so hard some days. It is just such a struggle. And then I'm hearing you and I'm like, oh man, I got it on easy street here. Like,
No, you know what?
This is easy compared to all that you were doing to
No,
put
I
this
gotta
book
tell you,
together. Like,
I
wow.
couldn't write a fiction short story. I'm not so intimidated by writing fiction. I can't believe, and let alone fiction that's in a series. Oh my gosh.
I think you could do it.
I don't know.
I do. I think you could
I
do
don't
it.
know.
Well,
I
I
don't
mean,
know.
you've been writing for a long time. You were a journalist and then an FBI agent and now an author. So how did that all come about?
Yeah, I just can't really hold a job, I think it comes down to. My undergraduate is in journalism. And when I was working as a journalist, I went to law school because the lawyers who I was covering as a journalist were lying to me a lot. So, a lot of journalists go to law school or used to go to law school. So I went to law school, but while I was in law school, I got offered a judicial clerkship. So I thought, well, I'll just do this because it's, $10,000 more than I was making before, and I had a new baby, and okay. So I worked, but then the judge that I was working for passed away, and the judges in her chambers sent me to the prosecutor's office and said, okay, you're an assistant state's attorney now. I was like, okay,
wow.
This is Chicago. Okay. So then I was a prosecutor, and I worked as a prosecutor, but I had an FBI agent who was my first cousin. He lived in the Phoenix area at the time, and he said, you should apply to be an FBI agent because it's a good paying job, and there's a couple of things about it. They're never going to send you home ever. They'll work you to death, and when the shit hits the fan, they're never gonna say there's no budget money for that. The federal government has all the budget money it needs in an emergency, which we all know now is true, and more. So I applied because he kept badgering me, and they offered me a job like a couple months after I applied, which I didn't realize was flattering because I had no interest in being in the FBI. So I went to the academy. I had 2 kids. I was divorced by then, and I spent 20 years in the FBI, started in Wisconsin, promoted into Washington, and worked in our Washington field office and the headquarters and things like that. And then I mandatoried out age-wise because they kicked people out at 57. So
wow.
Then I had to find something to do. So I went back to what I really love to do, which is write.
My God, it's so fascinating.
Can't hold a job.
I know. It's so fascinating.
Okay, I have a question kind of going back to where you were talking about the documentary thing. And I wondered about the choice. I'm assuming this was a choice to make about whether or not to include photographs. Because I know you have some on the front.
I have a lot of photographs, yeah.
I wondered about including photographs in the book and if that was a choice not to do that, or if, how that, and will the document, I mean, you don't know about the documentary, but, I'm assuming the documentary would want to talk about the actual process. And so
I actually have Detroit FBI headquarters authorized a release of about a couple dozen photographs, which I have. And I used some versions of them on the front cover, but I think I maybe was quite influenced by the people who I spoke to all along the way about ensuring that I respect the privacy as much as I can, not to re-victimize. That's as an FBI agent, it's really important. We always think of, and you hear from law enforcement, don't re-victimize somebody, right? Don't continue their trauma. And I didn't want to use anybody's photograph, even, one of the people mentioned early on in the book, unless they really wanted to. But I think what we're doing now is we're working on the idea of the second part of it, where we'll talk more about other events, other situations like this, potentially other digs, and some of the victims and the results, because I kind of promised that we'd get to the results more too, to know, and that may include some pictures. But I could have probably done a better job of putting some of the pictures from the cemetery, which were authored right into the book. And I just didn't do that. I can't.
Well, I listened to the audiobook, so I didn't think anything about it. So
Oh, okay, there you go. Thank you for saying that. I'm glad I did an audiobook. I really feel like everybody chooses how they, I like, when I hike, for my just daily hike kind of thing, I listen to audiobooks. It's easy. So I wanted to make sure every book I do, it will always be an audiobook, ebook, and in paper, because everybody's got their own way they want to consume.
Well, I have to know now, what do you listen to? Are you listening to like true crime podcasts? I mean, I know you have one yourself.
I have a true crime podcast. So I do listen to true crime podcasts. I listen to historical fiction that's like, especially if it's romance, don't tell anybody.
Like Bridgerton?
Yes. Total trash, right? I mean, in a really good way.
Fun. Yeah.
It's so much fun. You know, like my first book is called Stop the Killing, How to End the Mass Shooting Crisis. I don't do anything that isn't heavy, right? Second Amendment, I teach a class in the Second Amendment at law school. So that's why actually this book that's called Women Who Talk to the Dead, for 5 years, I called this my fun book. So what I listen to,
Wow.
it's more fun than mass shootings, which is, the interviews that I do every day with people and the lectures. And I work in, I have my own consulting company, and I consult during a crisis. When a company in New York has somebody shot in their lobby, I step in and talk to them and help them. So this is my fun book, trust me. So I need those fun things to listen to while I hike. So I love historical fiction that has a little, romancy stuff in it. And then I like, I do love to listen to kind of old style mysteries that are like stupid mysteries where nobody ever goes to the bathroom, nobody ever has a problem, the money is endless, the transportation is easy, and you solve the crime within like 200 pages. So those are kind of fun. And then, those are kind of my biggest chunks. And then I listen to random nonfictions. Like I just finished Everything is Tuberculosis, which is like the last book I would have ever read. It was fantastic.
Yeah. It is
It was
really interesting.
My favorite book of the year.
Okay, so I have a question.
Writes those cozy mysteries that you're just talking about.
That's Jenny.
Those are mysteries. I'm there, man.
That's exactly. I write those, and then I write cowboy romance.
So I saw that you created and led the FBI's active shooter program, and so then you have Stop the Killing too. Can you kind of like tell us about both?
Yeah, I can. I mean, what I write about, why I started to really write is I was working on a whole other book, and my agent said, you really need to write a book about this stuff that people keep calling you and asking you on interviews for first. So why don't you write that book, get it out of your head, and then you won't have to worry about it anymore. And so I did the first part, but the last part really failed, because once you have a book out about a subject that it turns out you're one of the world's experts in, everybody wants to talk to you. So the idea of, okay, I'll just set up a consulting company and I'll consult on this, but the concept behind it is if you have at work, or your kids have gone through kind of some version of run, hide, fight training, that came from the efforts that we started after Sandy Hook. And it really started with the Sandy Hook elementary school shooting happened, 20 children, 6 women killed in the school. Within weeks, I'm working with Vice President Biden's office and somebody from HHS and all the letters like HHS, Department of Ed, DOJ, FEMA. And we're looking for, what are we doing? Because Mr. Obama was in the office at the White House at the time, and he said the complaints that they were getting is that the federal government was all over the place, and the federal government had to have consistency and giving advice. So we created how to develop high quality emergency operations plans, best practices for law enforcement. We trained tens of thousands of law enforcement, the FBI did. We trained 300 of our tactical officers to have them train thousands of law enforcement officers in their own communities and train the trainer of them, so that all your tax dollars at work, thank you very much, $30 million of it out of my budget. And that training is why law enforcement goes to the shooter directly, right? We changed the dynamic of law enforcement training, emergency operations planning, best practices to say, hey, you have to have anonymous reporting systems. You have to have a threat assessment team in your school or your business. All these things that all came together. So my first book really is all of those things. It's a primer in all those things. And that's really, people who buy it are school district chiefs and, principals. And, I trained the New Jersey police chiefs this year in their annual retrainer. I do a lot of that where people are looking for the holes that are missing. Tuesday, I'm flying to Tulsa, Oklahoma to meet with the Tulsa Public School team, because they want to have somebody from the outside look and say, hey, are our schools ready? We know shootings are unusual, but are we ready if it really happens? And they have like tornadoes out there. So I don't know why they're worried about shootings. So that's really, it's very heavy. It is very heavy, but it's necessary because we live in a world where we have more guns than people, and in the United States, and 10 times more people killed in any firearm situation than any place else in the world.
So what makes Women Who Talk to the Dead different from the other books that you write? I mean, you must have had a different approach.
See, this is why it's my fun book. See?
Yeah, exactly.
Right? It may be about 200 dead people, but it's about the hopefulness. It's about the tenacity. The police officer, the detective, Shannon and Leslie did this because they thought it needed to be done. These murders that were unsolved stretch back over 70 years, and they were in paper files in a warehouse that were disintegrating like paper files disintegrate, and nobody was looking for these people. And Shannon and Leslie said to me many times, we're never going to give up on these people, even if nobody else has looked for them all these years. And I love that persistence in them. And I wanted to show that law enforcement is this. This is part of who law enforcement is. And we don't ever hear about this, but law enforcement can be the last line of defense, even 70 years later. And I really wanted that to convey.
Oh, you conveyed it. And one of the things I loved about it too was that you made clear that, ideally it would be great to find the killer of these people, right? Because all these people were murdered. But really, that wasn't the focus. The focus was identifying them so the families would know who they were. And you could close their stories.
Yeah. And Sharon, I didn't really get that in the beginning because I was like thinking like a cop, right? I'm like, we're going to get there. We're going to solve this. And Shannon was constantly saying the most important thing is these are people's brothers or sisters or mothers. We need to identify who they are. And she was very, very focused on that. And she and Leslie Larsen were in tandem with it. And it took me working on it for a couple of years to really completely appreciate the gravity of what they were saying. Because, if somebody was murdered 60 years ago, you might not be able to solve that mystery. But if there's a genetic connection, and so let me give you an example that didn't get in the book if I have a minute to do that.
Yes.
I had to cap the book at a certain point, right? Because they're still every day working these cases. So one of the things that I mentioned in the book is genetic genealogy. And it's a newer way to use DNA analysis. And I tried in the book to give everybody, if I had to learn something for the book, I wanted everybody reading it to learn a little bit too. Stuff that you hear, but you don't necessarily know what it means. What does DNA mean and why is it important and when can you use it and when you can't? So I tried to put a little bit of that in the book, but not too much. And genetic genealogy is one of those things where you might not have a direct DNA match, but if you use a genealogy charts, essentially, but they're DNA strands, you can work your way back and back and back and back for generations and connect people up and identify somebody. So here's one of the people who is not talked about in the book, but after the book was capped, Leslie was working genetic genealogy, and one of the people who they exhumed and took a bone from and pulled DNA, they were able to use, she's a certified genetic genealogist, which she did solely for this project so that she could do this for the rest of her career, make sure that she had that credential. She discovered, they discovered that this person was a male who had been killed in Detroit. And this person had a daughter that lived a couple of hours north. So they went to the daughter's house, and you can imagine what this must be like, right? They went to the daughter's house, hi, are you available? Is your dad here? Or, do you know where your dad is? And she says, yeah, he's in the back room. He's really sick. Do you need him for something? And they say, no, do you know where your biological dad is? And they say, and she's like, he abandoned my mother when she was 5 months pregnant. So they're like, sit down.
Mm.
And they sit her down and they explain to her that her biological father was murdered when when the mom was 5 months along, and he was murdered by a serial murderer in Detroit. He was the 11th victim of a serial murderer. He didn't abandon them. This has changed her entire life. I have a copy of her high school senior year paper that she wrote about how she fantasizes about who her dad is and why he left. Her entire life has changed.
Wow.
Her whole worldview.
Her whole worldview has changed. And there's nothing bad about that. There's no, oh, then her dad isn't her dad. That's the dad who raised her. That is her dad. But now she has not only understands that he never abandoned them, but also she has a grave she can go to say goodbye or to say hello.
Wow. What a story.
Wow. Story. Kate, what you mentioned a little bit at the end of the book, how this is what's been going on in Detroit with Leslie and Shannon, is now other jurisdictions are trying to do the same kind of work.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know of any other cities that have started programs like this between the FBI and law enforcement?
Yeah, basically, Leslie is the forensics expert, and that's why Shannon came to her to say, I have this crazy idea, can you do this? And Leslie can do anything. And so she said, sure, let's figure out a way to do it. I love to plan and I love to dig, so let's figure out a way to do it. So since this, she's teaching, essentially, she's an expert who actually teaches it over, in Europe and here too, when she gets a chance, when she's not working. And she's talked when this happens, when word gets out, like then a department calls and they say, hey, we have. So she's taken this team, her team, in and helped to teach others, including, I think, Philadelphia. I mentioned in the book that they dug, I think they just dug up 8. But I just talked to Leslie 2 days ago, and she said they have 2 other projects in 2 other cities that they think they're going to bring online to do the same thing. And her attitude is, we created the roadmap. We want everybody to use it. It doesn't have to be Leslie's team to do it, but they can certainly come in and guide them in how to do it.
And do they have volunteers that just come forward, just that many volunteers just come forward to do this work?
I would put it back to you. If I asked the 4 of you to come out and
I would
make sandwiches, right?
I would do it.
We're doing this thing. Could you just, bring sandwiches? Could everybody make 5 sandwiches for the crew that's going to be working all day? Everybody would do that. So the experts that are digging are all FBI agents, all forensic anthropologists, all Detroit police detectives, Michigan State police officers. They're all law enforcement. It's a crime scene. You have to get a court order in order to dig to exhume bodies. But all of the things that are peripheral to it, the porta potties, the water, the electricity, the tents, so that if it's raining, all of that is volunteer. And that's a credit to Shannon, who, beat the door down and said, hi, do you have an excavator that I can use? And when the company says yes, she says, can you send 4 instead of 1? She's very bold. So she's great. And, to her, there's no higher purpose.
Kate,
I had a question about that too, like with the volunteers and, the part where you just talked about Brian, the excavator, the guy but his job is normally like with utilities department or whatever, all these different people that volunteered and that came out, and he's doing this other job. I mean, how did the civilian people kind of deal with the gravity and the kind of, I don't want to say grossness, but kind of like I mean, that had to be kind of a mental, and you talk a lot about the smells and the soup and the goop, and how did the civilian people just deal with that? Did you talk to many of them?
Yeah, I did. And, I tried not to make people ask me sometimes, is the book really gross? I don't want my teen to read it. I'm like, I don't think it's really gross. I tried to make it visual, right? But
Yeah.
not textual, but not gross. And so anything that's there is there for a purpose, so to speak. But I think that, in the case of the excavators, in the case of the volunteers who brought food, they saw it. There was a balancing. I guess basically what I got out of them is a balancing of there's a higher purpose, and they feel like they're helping somebody do something that so nobody else would do. And I think that's really where it comes into it. I mean, truthfully, the forensic anthropologists are the ones reaching into the bags of bones.
Yeah.
Well, it's like maybe about a higher meaning. It's about finding meaning in it versus just being grossed out by what is being done,
Yeah. And I will say that everybody who's read the book has been like, wow, this is an inspiring story.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think that carries over the grossness.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
I'm curious, part of the issue with identifying the bodies that you talk about in the book, just for people who haven't read it, is the way the cemeteries were handling records of poor people.
Oh.
And so since this has been going on, has that changed going forward? Has Detroit or other cities found a better way to manage?
I don't think there's, I mean, I don't think that there's, I will tell you that one of the cemeteries, when they were working originally, one of the cemeteries was shut down and had to be reopened with new owners to fix some of the problems. But they're records problems. Whatever's underground, it's not a question of necessarily what's underground is wrong. It's that it wasn't necessarily documented properly. Right. But I mean, there certainly have been in plenty of cemetery situations, things that are wrong. And I tried to give a little bit of a global perspective to that, or at least a US perspective about, paupers' graves and what they are and why they're there and how they're handled. But underground is just, especially in a wet territory like Michigan, it's shifting. And I think that they do the best they can because it's not a Jenga puzzle that falls down and then you pick it up and put it back together. Mm-hmm. What's underground, hundreds of, graves that are 100 years old or less, they can't be changed.
Yeah. Well, but so going forward, do you think they're keeping better records, like because they know that someone's going to be watching them?
I think that certainly the new company, the newer owners are. I think that many of the in the cemeteries would say we kept good records. We kept the best records we could. And in the case of Leslie and Shannon, if they take a bone out of a cemetery, out of a casket, and they run DNA on it, it is very important to them that bone be returned to the body. Mm-hmm. And so they actually dig up every body twice.
So they don't to rebury until that bone comes back. They actually rebury and then
you have to. Yeah, you have to. It might take 4, 6, 8 months, 10 months to get DNA results because of the labs, and the requirements in the lab. So Leslie's ingenious. So she geoplotted every single person they dug up.
Oh.
So
I
they
was
know
curious about that too, because you had made the comment in the book about that they put the bones back. And I was like, so are they, some of them were the third, one down. And some of the, things were breaking. And I just thought, how are they going to get those back in there? So,
yeah, well, I watched them do it many a time. So they just do it. I mean, that's part of the struggle about the photographs, to use. Do I want to show broken caskets, being lifted and moved and body bags? No. So, I try to describe, but I try not to, I didn't want to visually create that image because the person that's in that box is a person.
Yeah. Oh, you did a really great job. And, I did use the word gross, but because some of it, I didn't know any other word, but I keep going back to the word fascinating because just the whole process was so learning and just in our normal lives, I guess we don't think about that.
Well, and it's kind of shocking to think, to me, it's shocking to think there are that many unidentified people, you
Flashlight.
know, and nobody thought to do anything about
Forgotten.
this until
Yeah.
until Leslie and Shannon. Like, it's just
Right,
shocking.
240 years into our
Yeah.
history.
Yeah,
Right.
it's shocking that that's been allowed to occur and nobody's, you know, no big deal. We're not even thinking about it, or it's not on our radar. Like, how?
Yeah, I think, you know, some people said, I did hear that, particularly what you just said early on, and they'd say, well, why does Detroit have this? And I said, every city has this.
Yeah.
Every city has this. These are just the two who decided to fix the problem in Detroit.
Well, I was
Yeah.
going to ask you a question too, like just a related question. In New Orleans, you were seeing all these videos of all the parades and stuff for Mardi Gras, but there's a section of Royal Street that's been all dug up. I guess they were redoing water pipes, and then of course they discovered bodies. But they have to look at every one because they don't know if they're from the 17th century or
Yeah.
from yesterday. Like, that's been really, and I know, you know, with yellow fever and all the things that happen in the South, there are people buried everywhere in those cities.
Right.
I can't imagine the amount of work. So would that be law enforcement and FBI as well doing that? Or is that more archaeology?
I think that you have to have a particular reason why you think that there's a law enforcement purpose behind it. So probably from an archaeological historical standpoint, that's where those would start, right? Just like you think of it, Jamestown, you know, they're excavating out there in Rome, they're excavating. And I think that's what would be going on there. But if there's a reason, you need a court order to look for a particular body. Usually what happens is you think somebody was killed, and you think that, you know, Bill Smith killed that person and there's going to be evidence on the body, or Bill Smith was the killer and we think he's buried here, and you go to get a specific search warrant for that specific person. So this kind of upended the whole plan of any time you go to search cemeteries, with Shannon saying, well, let's just find all the people who are unidentified and then just start from go there, so that we never have anybody without DNA in our files anymore.
And I can't remember from the book, did you find people that weren't in the files? Like like in the digging up of looking for the bodies, did you find extra bodies?
Well, not on purpose.
Right.
You're good. Let me just say a little spoiler alert here. You've made some references to the fact that in cemeteries, sometimes in paupers' graves, they bury a casket on top of a casket, or maybe 4 caskets deep. And the first 3 on the top might be identified individuals who were buried there. They were just buried by the county because the county, they died, the person's family didn't have any money, or they were indigent, or they were the last of their family. And so the county buries them, and they know who they are. That's Jim Smith. And Jim Smith is put into the grave on top of an unidentified murder victim. Well, they're not keeping track of who and why and how somebody died in the cemetery. So they put down an unidentified murder victim, and then they put Jen Smith, Sally Smith, and Joanne, Williams on top. So when they dig up to get to Jim Smith, they have to take out graves of people who have family members still living in town, family members, people who are clearly identified.
Wow.
And so they have to be very respectful of the fact that that's part of the equation, is they're disturbing somebody who was properly buried.
And do they have to get permission for that from the family?
Court order.
You can just move them up to get to what was underneath.
Well, your court order is to get to the one on the bottom.
Okay.
And law enforcement court orders from the court say, whatever means necessary, essentially, as long as it's legal. Digging up a cemetery grave and moving a casket aside is legal.
Well, what I found came away with the book was it's so much more complicated than TV would make you think it is.
Yeah.
TV makes it really easy, fast, and cheap.
Yeah. I did talk to the Jody Barta, the forensic anthropologist, about that very point. And I tried to keep the story. I will tell you, I'm sure you guys can relate to this. And anybody who's out there listening who's ever tried to write a book, one of the reasons this book took me almost 7 years to do is I rewrote it 3 times. The third time was the charm. I couldn't quite get the right, and it's still not, it's still not where I want it, right? Maybe that's how we always feel. But I couldn't get the right tempo in it to keep people reading it, in my mind. Hopefully you want to read each chapter because you want to know what's next in the story, which is how you write a compelling nonfiction narrative.
Well, that's what I thought you so well handled the individual stories of some of the victims too, like the way you wove those in.
Thank you.
That was really, really well done.
I read it in 2 sittings, and I just kept like telling myself, okay, I'll just read for 15 more minutes. Then I would set my timer and be like, okay, 15 more minutes. Wow. And then my timer would go off and I would repeat and be like, okay, 15 more minutes.
I'm honored. What's happening? I'm honored. Thank you. That's the highest compliment I've heard on the book yet. That's wonderful.
Oh yeah, I think I read it. And I finished it like at 1 a.m. Like I just was going to go to bed.
Well, it's not. I didn't. Also, the other thing is, and I should probably do this. Like in case you guys are looking, this is the book cover, right?
Yeah.
I didn't want to. This is the pictures they're talking about. I didn't want to write a long. That's all. There's too much sunshine in my house. Is that even possible? I didn't want to write a long book. I'm like, it's a nonfiction book, and I didn't want readers to be intimidated about this crazy story about forensics. I wanted it, again, to be a fun book. I wanted you to feel the hopefulness as you went along, and in the agony and the excitement. And I wanted the emotions to relay so that you kind of are like, okay, I think this can get done. I don't know how they're going to do this, So that was my goal. So I didn't want to make it too long, and I did want people to want to continue to turn the pages, which is very non-fiction. This very non-fiction like, if I could make up a phrase.
In some ways, it was as fast paced as a fiction novel. If that makes sense, because different POVs. Like, so we were with Shannon, then we were with Leslie, and then we were with a victim,
and then with Jody.
And then it was like, okay, I just got to see what Shannon's going to say next. Oh, wait. Leslie did. Where's Leslie's next chapter?
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad. Thank you.
With the pacing, technically, I thought it was great.
Oh, so on the cover, that little corner picture, is that Shannon or Leslie?
Oh, these two right here.
Is that them?
Yep, that's them. I had to put them on the cover.
Which is which?
Yeah. Leslie is the blonde, and Shannon is the brunette.
Yeah.
And for you were talking about who was talking about the pictures where Shannon actually put the victims' pictures on the wall in her office.
I loved reading.
And and it's like true. And I wanted to convey that. So it's there. The front cover has something like that, but just so for those of you, this is what the back cover looks like. Wow. You see Shannon tagging up pictures during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what she's wearing a mask. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was interesting that you talked about that too, just putting into perspective that they were doing all of this and then COVID hit. Yeah. And then trying to continue to go through that during the pandemic and so many more,
hurdles,
deaths and hurdles. And that was interesting to me too. And that her office just kept pushing out into the next and the next and the next. And so much of what we think about now is, well, you just Google it, just go look it up. Well, why wasn't that on go find it, where she had, if she wanted to find a file, she had to go to the grocery warehouse, and probably drive across town and dig through, so much of our mind now thinks electronically, and to think back to all the paper.
Well, the librarian in me was just like crying when they said, oh, you have a day to get rid of these files. Cause that happened to me, in the 2000s, like when I was working in an archive, and so all of a sudden you hear, oh, we're closing up. You've got 12 hours.
Right.
And you're in a building filled with stuff that could potentially change someone else's life. And how do you pick and choose, like picking your favorite children? Like, how do you?
You can see, I hope that you can see and become, want to become champions for them, for Leslie and Shannon. You want them to succeed because you're on their side. And that's what makes them, the book, to me, the story empowering, is that it's not just a sad story about people who died. The people died already. That is a horrid thing. They were killed already. These people resurrected their lives.
Gave them a name.
I
Yep.
love was the antagonist wasn't a villain. The antagonist was the bureaucracy and time.
Yes.
You know,
And that's very untrue crime-like.
yeah.
Yeah.
It was because they were going to shut the building down, so they had to move the boxes. I mean, that's as mundane as it gets, but
I know. Yeah, it's kind of crazy. And I think how, you talk about how what we think about digitally and everything. I got noticed this morning, just this morning, that the True Crime Con in London is putting this book in for the Impact for Change award.
Wow.
So that's kind of,
fantastic.
it's nice because it's really, I'm just telling their story. They're changing. And I think that's because they do things that involve victims and survivors and bad guys. And very rarely do they see something in the true crime world that is so focused on just, the antagonist is the bureaucracy and the victims are, unidentified, but, that's the story is about those people and the good guys who try to help, so to speak. And the bad guys are irrelevant to the story.
yeah, that was interesting. Like the actual murderers were never, barely mentioned.
I didn't want to make the story about them. I live in that world. I spent all day yesterday and today doing interviews about Savannah Guthrie's mom's disappearance. Those are bad guys, right? And we need that mom back. That's real life, terrible things where you're thinking, where's this bad guy and how can we find him? I wanted a story that was about the victims and the people who were champions for them.
Yeah, I love
You did it. You did it.
Yeah,
Thank
you
you.
did.
So where do you go from now that you've done that and you've had great success and, achieved this? What are you going to work on next?
Well, I think I owe my readers a follow-up to this book, Women Who Talk to the Dead, the one that we're talking about.
Fantastic.
I think I owe a follow-up, and I talked to, that's why I talked to Leslie just the other day about what the status is on how many of the 200 they've already identified through DNA, and the cases that they've worked on, and the people that they've reconnected, the family members they've reconnected. So, and again, that's a privacy issue, right? So I want to make sure that I don't re-victimize anybody. It's going to have to be, with the families talking to me and being comfortable doing that. But I think they have a good story to tell now, right? They have a positive story to tell. That in their whole lives, they've never had a positive story to tell. So I'm working on that. And then also I'm doing kind of a companion to Stop the Killing, which is a book about, targeted violence and school violence and everything and more than you want to know about it. I'm doing a book for parents about a parent's guide to keeping your child safe in school. Because I think that a lot of people are worried about that.
Yeah.
Well, we look forward to both of those. And we know that you have interviews coming up, TikTok. So we appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and talk with
it's
our
my
book
honor.
club.
When your
And,
next book comes out, hopefully you'll come back on.
Yes,
oh,
definitely.
we'd love to do it.
I don't know. It'll be another nonfiction book. So
That's fine.
It's okay. We can roll with it. It's all good.
I like the flexibility.
Right.
I like the flexibility, little Gumby action. That's good. Thank you so much for taking the time today. If anybody is interested in finding the book, it's available audiobook, ebook, and print. I try to do all my books that way because you never know what somebody's preference is. And so audiobook, ebook, print, and then you can find anything about me on katherineschweit.com. If you can spell my name, which is the trickiest part, but it's Schweit, and it's Katherine, if I could say this to Sharon, right? It's the old Catholic way.
Yeah.
Except with a K, Katherine, Katherine, Schweit, katherineschweit.com. And I think, you can see it on the little notice from today's event. But I'd be thrilled to hear how other people think the book turned out, because it was at some points it was quite a labor of love. As long about the second and a half version, I was like, this book is going to be the death of me.
I think we've all felt that at different points in our books too.
So true. It's true.
Exactly.
So much for coming today.
Oh my
Yes,
gosh, it
thank
was
you
my
very
honor.
much.
You guys are great. Thank you so much for letting me
Thank
share
you.
this incredible story. Take care.
Take care. Bye.
Wow.
Wow. She was
That
great.
was,
It was
Oh my
yeah.
God.
wonderful.
That hour went so fast.
I know.
I
I
know it did. It just flew by and I was so engrossed. I was like, oh my gosh, we could
I
keep
know.
going.
I need to look up on the thesaurus something to say besides fascinating, because I feel like I just kept saying fascinating like 15 times. And I was trying to think of something else to say. But
You're
that's
supposed
what
to
it
be a
was.
writer. We should be able to
I
call
know.
those words, but like
Right,
better
right,
words, but-
exactly.
That just seemed to describe it so well. So
Well, it's fun because we're going from kind of serious and informative to something flirty and sexy and back to our romance roots. With our next book is by Adriana Anders and it's a dom-com. So I
Wow.
know she's so funny. I don't know how she came up with that title, but
I
that
know,
is
it's
going to
just
be a
great.
hoot. All right.
Knowing
We will
Adriana is gonna
see
be
you
really funny.
all. You know, it's a February book, so we'll see you all at the end of February. Bye.
Bye.